Everybody ready? Ms. Wilson, can you bring us out of closed session?
Is there a motion to reconvene an open meeting and certify that only the matters that were identified in the motion to go into closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered?
I move. I'll second.
Mr. Green, did you poll each board member?
Please answer by saying, I so certify. Mr. Bowen?
I so certify.
Ms. Phillips?
I so certify.
Mr. Walls?
I certify.
Mr. Jones?
I so certify this time.
Mr. Dawes?
I so certify. So next on our agenda is the FY26 budget request. Do we want Ms. Wilson to start, or do we just want to start with our individual proposed cuts? What's the board's pleasure?
If you don't mind, if the board just tells me and I'll do it live on my computer. Or do you have it live up there that we can do it as we're going?
Yeah, sorry, something's fuzzy. I thought it was me.
Me.
Oh,
Yeah, if you could do it live up there so the public can see it. I'll do it on my computer.
Right, so you're able to enter it there? So okay with the board?
She's gonna enter it up there too.
Okay, sorry for the board, I'll start with what my recommendations are.
that's not the Excel sheet, so she won't be able to enter it.
Oh, she can't, okay. Oh,
So
Go ahead, I can get it while you're.
before I start, for everyone that's here, when we started this process, we were at 3.8, I believe, 18 cents looking at if we funded all of the requests. And we understand that it's not feasible. So we've worked very diligently trying to get this whittled down to the best that we can. So when we left last time, after our draft 2, we were 1.27254 short. So when I started with that, board members, I added back in fire and rescues combined 255,000. If I go too fast, Ms. Wilson.
I had already got that one.
I added back in the sheriff's 110,000. Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay, that's okay.
I should be able to go right through it.
There's a lot of pages.
Just for clarification, that's adding 110,000 to
The part-time line item?
part-time salaries and wages.
Yes, ma'am.
So that'll make it 358,557.
Yes, ma'am. Next, I took the YMCA, I believe we had zeroed that out, but I took 35,000. Are you in the sheriff's right there?
Yep.
Okay, so while you're there, I added back in 6,000 for the machine and equipment line item.
Do you have the line item?
I don't, I can get it.
Oh, machinery and equipment.
Yes, ma'am.
It was 2,000 and you added,
6, I think it was originally 8, back to 8, yes. Okay, so the one before, if you can find the YMCA to the 35.
$35,000.
Yes, ma'am, total. And then I added 8,000 back into the VA 250. Then I added, that's okay, then I added 8,000 back into VA 250. Bless you.
You added how much?
8,000,
Back to 10?
yes, ma'am. All right, so then I reduced the IT department's budget by 204,876. But however, I think that we could just line that out to a total of 485. I think that actually is a little bit more.
So we don't have. All right, let me just zero out all of these.
And part of what you're doing that, so the public is aware, is reducing, the Jeff Beaker contract from 120,000 to 60,000.
All right, we need to make some more cuts.
Okay.
I'm at I took out all of the personnel. And I still have 112 for contracted services, and then 127,000 for our licenses. And then we have 67 for our finance and accounting system.
I reduced the 67 down to 60.
Okay, actually, that's the one where we have, quests to cut in it. So let's take out 20,000.
Okay.
47.
And then I reduced the equipment replacement to 50. I took 25 out.
I'm at 525.
Okay, so we need to find another 40 out of that. We can work on that later.
So just leave that.
Just leave it right there.
Okay.
Just remember that 40 for there. Okay, so then I took 8,000 out of Matthews Visitor Center.
So that was on the salary line item, is that the one you took out?
Yes.
So I just want to be clear that this comes from the tourism, the tax meals, lodging tax, and it's the 3%. So if we don't spend it there, we've got to spend it somewhere else, because it's tied to that revenue.
Okay, we'll leave it in for right now then, because let's see where we're at the bottom. I took out 82,000 out of the bottom line of the library.
I'll just do it from the total.
Okay.
And it should, just as a starting.
That's okay.
Do you have a calculator?
What's that total line?
Actually, I have it at $570,016.
$16, then minus 82. Takes it to 488,016.
Okay.
I left the schools at the 10% reduction.
I don't think I have that 10% reduction.
I think that was, maybe it's not 10%. There you go. Well, I had originally looked at doing away with the planning vehicle, one shared vehicle, and a school bus. But you had said, indicated that was in capital CIP, not the operating, so.
So on the schools, they had requested, I had 10,091,541, and I reduced that to 9 million.
Yes,
Okay, so we'll leave that.
I had to change what the draft two, draft 2 here said.
Okay, which was 9 million, yeah, it's, yeah, 10,091,541.
You reduced it to
9, yeah.
9 even?
Okay, so we'll leave those 3 vehicles in the CIP,
Okay.
since that's not part of the operating budget. Board members, that's where I'm at with cuts right now. I don't know exactly where that takes us to.
That takes us to minus 1,456,592.
How much, 1 million?
1,456,592.
So that's what we have to come up with.
Yes.
All right, I'd like to speak. Of course, in our last meeting, I had discussed the schools and the budget. Of course, that's one of our biggest items here. And I did some research and I called up to verify how I was thinking about this. I called the state to verify a few things. Number one, it looks like, and if Dr. Daniel was here, he's not here, maybe Ms. Gibbs can answer this. It's my understanding that the states are going to look at $5.9 million. Is that correct? Is what your contribution from the state's going to be?
That sounds about right, but I have to verify that. I can verify.
Okay, so in my logic, we have the local composite index, and of course, we've spoken many times about this local composite index. So, and before anybody freaks out, hear me out, okay? That represents, if we're at roughly 60% on the local composite index, that's $5.9 million would be 40% of the school budget by the state's calculation, okay? Which they've come up with this number for some reason, okay? So when we add back in, if we took that number and we added 60% to that to come up with the budget, it would be $14,750,000, and that's before any federal funds are kicked in. So that means that the county, in retrospect, at 60% would be at $8,850,000. Okay, and we're at 9. Okay, before any cuts. I mean, before anything, any agreements, MOUs for maintenance. So that number is pretty well on pace. I guess what I'm having a hard time with is I could understand if we were 2% off or 4% off, but the request from the schools was $10,239,941. And I'm just trying to understand how that we got to that number in funding. And maybe somebody could answer that. Now, also we're talking with the state. They said that this $5.9 million, not all of this $5.9 million was subject to this match because some of it is direct funding. So actually that number would be lower, and I've asked for the number and I haven't seen it yet. But however it is, we're 150,000 right now above where the state says we should be in our funding. And that's excluding, then there's additional funding that's coming from the federal government. So let's throw the composite index out. The state is coming up, they're using some source, some type of programming or the powers to be to come up with that number, to saying this is 40% of your budget. And I'd be really interested to know how they're coming up with that number. Because if what I'm hearing from the school is that this is falling flat, the board right at this point in time is funding the schools at $9 million, $150,000 more than what the state says we should fund. Okay? So the discord in the figures would be, where's the state coming up with $5.9 million? I'm a board of supervisors member tasked with our local budget. But somebody needs to ask that question on how they're arriving at their figure. That makes sense? So, and Ms. Gibbs, I know you're sitting there, and that's why I'm asking. If this number is disconnected, okay, well then we have a bigger problem, because in the local composite index, that they're using some sort of mathematics, something there to come up with this number on how to fund us. And I don't know what that is. Okay, I can only sit back and say, okay, Well, we have a local composite index for a reason, so now you throw that back in, and we do the numbers, and this is where I'm at anyway, as far as what they say that we should adequately be funding the schools. The other part of it that's disconcerting to me is the lowball figure for the maintenance if we were to take it over. And it's not adequate compared to other budgets. So I would really like to know before our next meeting, what part of this $5.9 million is subject to, what part of that is subject to the local composite index of where they're saying that we're at. Then some thought has to be given. So who's going to petition the state to go up there and talk to them about this, to say, listen, you're underfunding us. If the school is right about their budget, if the school is right about their budget at $10.2 million, and the state's saying, wait a minute, that's not the right number. You should be at $8,850,000. Then we have a major disconnect. Okay, but as a supervisor looking at what the state is giving, that's what I have to go by. And the other thing is last year we had agreed on a certain budget, and 6%, I believe, was given across the board. And our staff here only got 6%. Okay, and I asked for to get some updated figures on how our students were doing. And I can't seem to get that answer either. So right now, at this point, that makes it very difficult for me to look at this budget in its capacity. I really, before I make a decision, would really like to get answers to those questions, because I think that it is absolutely necessary that we get answers to those questions. So let me just move on real quick to the maintenance budget. I don't know how much the county spent this year out of the county's maintenance budget to work over at the school at the time that it was put in over there. I don't have those figures. Do we know those figures, Ramona? The time that we spent, because at this point in time, we do not have an MOU. We don't, and we need to get this MOU tied down so we can move forward. And I don't know what's holding that MOU up, but I'd like to see that MOU ready to go so we can vote on it by next week. I want that MOU. I would like to see this MOU here next week for our regular meeting so we can vote on this MOU and move forward.
So, our county attorney had, 2 line items changed, and the school sent it to their attorney. Their attorney modified the 2 line items, and I sent it back to the county attorney, and I haven't heard anything back.
Okay, so it would really be nice to have that MOU for our board meeting next week and done. That tells us exactly how far we need to go and what we need to do to finish this up.
She should be part of our call tomorrow, correct for the agenda meeting?
Yes.
We'll find out tomorrow.
And I have one more suggestion that board members, you might be laying this out here. Mr. Walls and I have been in many discussions with the fire department. And they are on the ball over there. They're doing a lot of work behind the scenes to make this project as cost effective moving forward as they can. And my hat's off to them. I would like to see that we get an agreement with them, fund them up to $3 million, give them the building. We get an agreement, of course, to get the old fire station after 24 months. And we set this up where the money is protected and given for the construction as it's needed. All the performance bonds would be in place. That takes us out of it. That way we can fund them, they can get the project done, they've got a lot of volunteer help there that they're gonna be pulling from, and I think we would be best to let them handle it. And we step back from it, and that's gonna save about $3.5 to $4 million to the taxpayer of this county on this new debt service that we're getting ready to pick up for some of the other stuff that we have to do. And that's where I stand.
So just a clarification question, Mr. Jones, so the $3 million given to the fire department to rehab the building, it wouldn't all be at one time? It would be
No, sir.
As the progress.
As the progress goes, yeah, we would set up an agreement with them that's rock solid. But they can handle it, they've got the people in the way, we give them 24 months, which I think is, and that can start on July the 1st or whenever we want to start the 20, we give them 24 months to complete the process. And at the end of that 24 months, I believe that they'll be in it, they'll be happy, and everybody will have done their due diligence, and we're gonna save this county a ton of money. And that's what I'm looking to do, and I think it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Who's next?
Well, first of all, I would say that the cuts that you and David have lined out is pretty much what we've agreed upon up to this point. I would say, as far as the fire department and the rebuilding the Boys and Girls Club go to be sufficient for the fire department, that we should get the project manager moving along really quickly with the engineer drawings. Because it'd be really nice to get a shovel in the ground over there by the end of the year. If we're looking at 24 months, we gotta get rolling. There's a lot to be done. But I would like to say this, because 4 years ago, I ran on, I would never vote to raise this county's taxes until we had scrutinized every aspect of this budget. I would have to say, being the fourth go-round, we have scrutinized this budget more this year than we ever have in the previous 3.
Mr. Spohn?
So where we are now, we have $1.456 million that we need to fund. And right now, we're looking at doing that from real estate taxes. So that's 6.9 cents, call it 7 cents. And that's just operating expenses. The presentation we had tonight from Davenport suggested that we have 2 cents this year, or fiscal year 26, for debt service. So that's 9 cents added to the real estate tax, which is right now 56 cents. And that doesn't even address the improvements to the schools, buildings that we try to identify. We're not talking about the energy audit, we're talking about additions, improvements to the school consolidation. And I've heard anywhere from 10 to 15 million for that. And if we just use the 9 million figure that Davenport presented, that's another 7 to 8 cents on top of what we're talking about tonight. Which would be not for fiscal year 26, but 27, 20, sometime down the road, depending on what we decided to do, needed to be done. So you can see that if we did that, talked about 9 cents and then another 7 to 8 or 16 cents or so to the 56 cents, that gets us up over 75 cents, around 75 cents, and Gloucester right now is at 58, Middlesex is at 61. There's going to be increases, but that's a pretty significant increase for Matthews County. And One of the things we need to talk about, and this, Dr. Gibbs is exactly what you talked about, is we have to have, when it comes to the school system, in my mind, we're talking about two main expenses. We're talking about capital improvements to repair the schools, and we're talking about operating costs. And what I think we need, what the Board of Supervisors needs from the school board is a plan on both of those issues and a discussion of a plan. We can start this during our leadership meetings that we have once a month. But working forward, we have to look at that because we have to realize that and let me go back and say that I am a strong supporter of having a viable, strong school system. And I want to make sure that our teachers are properly compensated. Last year, I believe they got a 6% raise, and I was certainly in favor of that. I think this year's budget, before we cut it, was around 5%. I would support that as well, but I'm not sure. I think we have to I would like for the school board to try to draw a distinction between teachers and non-teachers. I would like there to be some more parity between what school employees get and what county employees get. County employees share in the cost of their medical insurance. We are planning to try to budget them a 3%, not a 5%, but a 3% pay increase this year. I'm not opposed to the teachers getting 5% this year, but I don't know that I'm in favor of the others. Again, I think as supervisors, we need to have some parity between what the county pays their employees and what the school board pays their employees. And we can have that discussion too, because if there's something out of balance, we were just told at our last meeting that the compensation that the county pays county employees is low, is below what our competitors pay. And we're not even trying to address that this year. The 3% pay raise we're talking about is in line with what the state is recommending for constitutional officers, employees. And so we're trying to honor that, which is traditionally what the county has done. But we're not even trying, we just don't have the funds to address the payroll disparity that was pointed out. And we don't have the nuts and bolts of that. I was hoping that we could get some more detailed information. That's why I was asking the presenter to provide that to us. And maybe we can. But going forward, what does everybody, the school board, the supervisors, and the citizens need to understand is there's just a limited amount of revenue that we can increase by property taxes. And that means that if we're going to increase salaries, then that's probably at a certain point going to take away from the money that we might be able to have in a bond referendum for improvements to the school. And vice versa, if we start putting a certain amount of money in improving the schools, then that's going to cut back on the salaries. Because whether a penny is going towards bonds or a penny's going on real estate taxes going to operating expense, it's still a penny to the citizens. And we can only raise that so much. The other thing we have in Matthews County is that we have a higher dependence on real estate taxes than almost anybody surrounding us. We do not have the sales. Gloucester County has special legislation that allows them to have 2% sales tax. We don't have 1% in Matthews County. We weren't part of that special legislation. We don't have the sales to be, Gloucester County is about, population is probably about 4 to 5 times the population of Matthews. But their sales tax is a whole lot more than 4 to 5 times Matthews, because look at all the Home Depots and that, we don't have that, so we don't get that revenue. Even Middlesex County has more business than Matthews County, so we have to make up more of that money in real estate taxes, more than the other counties do. Middlesex, I don't know what Middlesex County is getting in revenue from solar farms, but I bet it's significant. And of course, we don't have any of that income in Matthews County. So right now, the only place we can turn to is primarily real estate. Now, if we get this sales tax, hopefully we'll get a referendum and bump it up to 2%, and that extra 1% would go just to the schools. And there may be some things that the supervisors can do to try to adjust the real estate taxes. And I haven't researched this, I hesitate to bring it up, but I'll be the fool and talk about it. We need to try to explore, since we're so dependent on real estate taxes, I think we need to explore if we can tax waterfront homes higher than other properties. And people are gonna say, but our waterfront homes are already taxed valued more because they're waterfront, and that's true. One of the problems with our LCI is that we seem to have, according to the state, a large volume of very expensive real estate properties. And that causes the county to have to pay more at the local level than other counties. It doesn't take I think there's a lot of deficiencies in the LCI. It doesn't give proper weight to sales tax. Like, again, the sales tax that Gloucester and urban centers get is calculates so little in the LCI, it doesn't it's not that big of a factor. So they have all this extra money that doesn't count against them. Matthews County, we don't have a significant amount of money, so it doesn't, but in the LCI, it hurts us. Because we don't have the amount of money that other jurisdictions have. So again, that makes us more dependent on real estate. So there's things we have to do, and we have, as a board, we have worked through the budget, and we have reduced a lot of requests. We went from 3 million down to 3.8 to 1.4 at this point. And a lot of that is inflation. And we realize that that's going to happen every year. But we're just at a point, and I think a critical point going forward, that we're going to have to have some serious discussions about school consolidation of buildings and of personnel. And I don't know what that involves, but and a plan of how we can get there in maybe 2 years, or have a plan of when we get something, and work that into our budget. This business of trying to address these expenditures from year to year without some type of forward plan, I think is not a good way to try to address the budget issues. And I'm not trying to pick on the schools, but as you know, that's the largest ticket item. And so we have to take a critical look at that as well. And we have reduced your budget at this point by over $1 million, which is a big whack. We understand that. But you can see from the burden it places on the taxpayers, that $1 million is basically another 5 cents. That if we didn't cut that, then we're talking about 5 more cents in real estate tax. That's just too much for the citizens at this juncture. So, it's a tough decisions we're having to make, but we have to start planning ahead, and as a board, we have to find ways to maybe increase some additional revenue. Maybe there's some other areas that we can increase revenues. It's not gonna be as significant as real estate, but, you know, $10,000 here and $100,000 there can make a real difference, or can be a big help.
Ms. Phillips?
This has been, I think I mentioned earlier, I've done many budgets and many of them a lot bigger numbers than these numbers. But the balancing act has been very difficult. And I realize that the decisions we make have quality of life impacts. And that's hard. I wish we didn't have to cut anyone, and as everyone knows, I have been a proponent of our schools, and I do believe our schools are our economic drivers for our community. If you don't have good schools, nobody is gonna come here. I don't care if you have work, if you have housing, you've got to have good schools. So this was a hard budget to go through, and I know there'll be some challenges going forward. However, I do believe we all have to think out of the box. Just this year, Norfolk board has gone back to their school board and said, close 10 schools. Or you need a plan to close 10 schools. So the Norfolk board had to make that hard decision, and that impacts a lot of people. And you get the citizens talking about how difficult it is. But no one has a solution other than, raising taxes or just letting their schools decline, and that's not the right answer. So we have to do what's right, and we're gonna have to think outside the box and stretch and figure out when can everybody cut. I think everybody has heard that Gloucester's looking at a tough year. They're gonna be raising their taxes. York County is raising taxes. I think King and Queen will be raising their taxes. A lot of the localities near us and away from us are raising taxes. And let us remember, there are some localities that pay over $1 their tax rate. So I know we don't have the services they do, but we have a lot that they don't. Good stuff. Cutting the library is very hard for me to see. I believe that library is truly a gem. And if you go in there any day and you see kids, you see teenagers, you see adults, they've just recently converted room to like a business center, so when you have a meeting, if you have to do modifications to budgets or whatever, you can do it. So our library has probably been the technical leader in the whole region as far as technology, which says a lot. And the fact that it was named one of the top 10 libraries in the United States says a lot about what a gem it is. Does it produce revenue? You can't say that it does, but it does attract people, just like our beach and everything else. So cutting that library is hard, but where else are we gonna get this money? And that's the sad part. And it will impact the services that they can offer and so forth, which are used by a lot of people who can't access internet. They come in, their children come in to read. They have lots of great programs, and I hate to see it happen. We do have, as a board, a challenge to try to identify ways that we can increase or diversify our revenue stream, and we've talked about it, and I've looked at it. I talked earlier in my time about the cigarette tax, thought that was a hot item, and maybe we could get some money, and then I did more and more research, and I realized from the research I had done that you may get a little bit, but what we may do in the course of, because Gloucester does not have a cigarette tax. So what's going to happen is people will go to Gloucester to buy their cigarettes, and while they're there, they're gonna buy them their milk and their bread, and they're gonna pick up groceries. So we are probably gonna, and gas, they're probably gonna lose business to Gloucester, more business because of that cigarette tax. And the cigarette tax is not something that deters anyone from smoking. It's not a health thing. And it's, in effect, a tax on a very limited number of people. And it's not that, it's very hard to implement. So I think it's probably, from what my research, and I looked at the Weldon School of Business at the University of Virginia, they pretty much have come up with the conclusion it's not necessarily a good source of revenue. Transient tax, that's a tax on our Airbnbs and our vacation rental by owners and so forth. I think that's somewhere we can look. It's not a lot of money in total. I think it's $180,000 that we get. So if we increase it some, that would be a little bit more, but it's something I think we should be looking at. Increasing the building permits and the licenses, we talked about that earlier. That's on the agenda for the next meeting. I hope people will support that. There may be people who question why we're raising it in here. The reason we're raising it is because it's a source of revenue, and we are way below our surrounding localities on what we charge. Hadn't been updated in 12 years, long time. So when that comes up for a public hearing, please understand why. And it's really not a big deal, I don't think. I'm not sure, do we have the business license for the short-term rentals on the agenda for next, not on the public hearing? Okay, those are things we can look at, but again, it's not going to be a significant amount of revenue. So increasing revenues is going to be one of the hardest things we can do, and as Tom says, you know, it's real estate taxes. That's probably the biggest one we've got. But I do say, so we can't increase revenue but so much. We'll try hard. And as you may recall, when our auditors came and presented their results, I made the observation at that time, our revenues went up by 5% over the previous year. Sounded pretty good, 5% increase. Our expenses went up 11%. We can't keep operating like this. So we're going to have to do some things. And to that point, my challenge would be to all of our department heads to really look and see where there's any opportunity to reduce costs. It's not a big, every penny counts, and that's what we're seeing here. Every penny counts. So every department that operates, I challenge them to just look at every line item, everything they do, to see whether, you know, you can cut out a bus ride, if you can cut out a trip, if you can do something online, if you can, as opposed to going there, all those things. And if an employee resigns or retires, do you have to replace them? Can you replace them with part-time? Do cross-training so you have backups. So I think we all have to do some real thinking out of the box and realizing that our citizens cannot continue to fund us if it's not super efficient. So that's it.
I think that's about it for our budget, FY26 budget process. Unless anybody else has anything else to say, I will just add that it was extremely difficult for us this year. There's just nowhere to cut. There's just nothing to reduce. I mean, you go back to 08 when the market crashed, and ever since then, it's cut. I remember not getting raises through the state for 4 years. I remember being told, give me a 5, 10, or 15% cut. And that mentality is locked in. Just always cut, don't fix this now. And you see right now, we have a line item for the schools, $1.4 million for maintenance. You know, the school board and our relationship is great, and this is not a reflection of that school board. It's not a reflection of any of us up here. But if you neglect something for 10, 20, 30 years, at some point, you gotta pay to fix it. So that's where we're at. So, we understand it's gonna be difficult for some people, but this was also very difficult for us. We didn't want to cut the schools at all. But there's just no funds there. So if we don't have anything else for the budget request, we'll move on to new business.
This is resolution 25-14. Whereas Mayfair is held the first weekend in May and will take place on May 2nd and 3rd in 2025. And whereas Mayfair 2025 is dedicated to country stores, post office, and wharfs. And whereas Mayfair is organized by volunteers to support the Matthews Museum. And now therefore be resolved that the Matthews County Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim its appreciation of the volunteers and their commitment to community service. And be it further resolved that the Matthews County Board of Supervisors wishes the Mayfair Committee a successful and memorable event.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve resolution 2514 for Mayfair.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. There's a second part to this, in your packet. There's the VDOT land use permit for the road closures for Mayfair. And the date of the event is May 2nd and 3rd. Beginning time is 9 a.m. on May 2nd, and ending time is 7 p.m. on May the 3rd. And that is for to close the streets for Mayfair.
Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion that we approve the VDOT land use permit for special events for Mayfair on May 2nd and 3rd.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
The next one's mine too. So the next item is a transfer of funds that the board needs to approve transferring from one account to another, different departments. And this is for call boxes, and the sheriff got a grant for this. And the grant was $46,654.70. And the county, there was a match to this, and the county match, so there's a match in subscriptions, which was Verizon, which was $5,220, and then the county match was $39,235.30. Without the county match, and it has to be spent by June 30th. So in order to not have to give back the $46,000, we're gonna transfer, or we're proposing to transfer some money from some other accounts. One is from the administration budget. First, because the strategic planning and the class and comp plan, we had about $20,000 left in there. So we're proposing to transfer that into a CIP account for these call boxes. And then the second is when we transferred from fund balance for the last budget amendment, we transferred $211,146 for the new microwaves. There was new radio equipment, which was $91,000 for the new radio equipment, and then $119,000 for the new microwaves. And our consultant negotiated that down to $99,000, so there was $20,000 savings there. So we're proposing to transfer from those two accounts into a CIP account just for this project. Yes.
Can we get a motion for that transfer request?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Board members, is that Ms. Wilson going to do all of that? So So that does everything for our meeting. Board members, any other board members have anything else they'd like to bring up tonight? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.